Hola, ¿cómo estás? Muy bien, gracias. ¿Y tú? This video, we're going to learn how to make a simple program slash game where every time we click on our stage, we get a random dice roll, or die roll, whatever you'd like to call it. So, to begin, I'm going to go ahead and create a new ActionScript 3.0 document, and I'm going to save it as, my name dash dice roll. Or actually, I'm gonna name it die roll, because technically it's only one die. Dice is a pair. Um, anyway, save it, Mr. Davis, die roll. Obviously, you would put your name instead of Mr. Davis. So, to begin, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a couple layers. I'm going to name one layer actions. I'm going to lock that layer. I'm going to make a new layer, drag it below. Now I'm just going to name this one die. Normally I name it art, but the only thing going to be on here is our die. And now we can begin. So what do we have to do first? Well, first we need to create our die. So let's go into insert, new symbol. We'll name this die, and it'll be type movie clip. Then we can go ahead and click OK. So now we are inside our die, and we can begin. So let's create a dot. So like just a little circle to represent our numbers, right? You've seen a die before. So I'm just gonna hold down Shift using my oval tool and get a circle. And I'm actually going to convert this. So I'm going to select it and press F8, and I'm just going to create a movie clip with it, name it dot, type will be movie clip, and the registration will be in the center. And click OK. And we're going to need 9 of these total, but for now, let's just work with 3. And I'm going to show you how to get a nice, neat presentation, I guess, or so that everything's nice and even. So what we're going to do is we're going to take these 3, right? And we're going to go into our line panel. So right now I have align to stage checked. I'm just going to center them horizontally. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that we have the vertical center distributed evenly. So there's even space in between all of these. But I don't really like how far apart they are. So I'm going to uncheck align to stage. I'm going to move my top one down a little bit. And if you click on it and hold shift, it'll snap to going straight down. Or you can just click it, keep tapping the down key, down and shift, whatever you want. But I'm just going to move it closer towards this one in the middle, and move this one closer to the one in the middle as well. So once I have this kind of close enough, I'm going to select them all. I'm going to uncheck align to stage, and I'm going to distribute the vertical center to make sure they are all evenly spaced. So now that I have that, I'm going to select all 3 of these. I'm going to turn these all into another movie clip and call it 3V for vertical dots, okay? Set it as a movie clip, registration in the center. So now I have all 3 of these as a movie clip. If I go in, I should have a bunch of different dots. So I'm going to go make sure I'm in die. Make sure you are in die. So from here, I'm going to drag on 2 more copies of 3V dots, and that's just in the library. And what I'm going to do here, I'm going to select them all. I'm going to say align to stage. I'm going to align them to the vertical center, so that way they're all centered in our stage. And now the only other thing I need to do is to make sure they are distributed evenly. So the way to do that is make sure align to stage is unchecked, and we want to not distribute vertical center, we want to distribute the horizontal center. But once again, I don't entirely like how spaced out these are. So I'm going to take this one on the left, select it, and just tap the right arrow key until it's close enough, as close as I want it, and maybe a little bit further. I'm just going to play around with these to get something that I kind of like. And we're getting close there. That looks about good to me. So I'm going to select them all, make sure they are distributed horizontally center, and I'm going to align them vertically center. So I clicked distribute horizontal center and align vertical center. So once that's done, I'm going to select all of these, tap F8, convert them to a symbol, and call this 9 dots. Make sure it's a movie clip, registration in the middle. So now that we have this, we have our 9 dots movie clip. Inside of it, we have 3 instances of 3 V dots, and inside of each one of those, we have 3 instances of dot. So you can see that up here. So I'm going to make sure I'm still in my die movie clip. Select this, go to my align tool, click align to stage, align it to the center, align it to the center, both horizontal and vertical center. And this way, I'm guaranteed that this dot here is directly in the center. So now that we have this aligned to the center, we don't really need it to be a movie clip anymore. I just wanted to put these all in a movie clip so that way I can make sure everything was nice and centered. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click on this, click break apart. It's going to turn it into whatever inside of it. So in this case, there are our 3 V dots. So I'm going to select all of these, break them apart again, until we have all 9 of our individual instances of dot. So now that we have that done, a die has 6 sides to it. So we're going to need 6 frames on our dots layer. And make sure you rename this layer to dots if you haven't already. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to right click and click insert keyframe, or just select a frame and tap F6, 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 F6 until I have 6 frames total. And now we can start making the parts of our die. So on frame 1, we only want to have 1 dot. So normally when we only have 1 dot on a die, it's dead center. So I'm just going to do that right there. I'm going to go to frame 2. Well, 2, we just want these 2 in the bottom left, or sorry, top left, bottom right corner. So I'm deleting all these here. On 3, we just want 3 going across. On frame 4, we just want, what, the 4 in the corner, right? 4 in the corner. And on 5, we want an X sort of pattern, so I'm just deleting all these around here. And on 6, we just want the two vertical rows. So now I'm going to save. Let's check. So on frame 1, we have 1 dot. 2, we have 2. 3, we have 3. 4, we have 4. 5, we have 5. And 6, we have 6. Cool. But that's not good enough yet. What we need is some kind of background so that we know that this is a die and it's not just a floating set of dots, right? So let's make this nice and easy. Let's create a new layer, and it automatically fills it out so that it fills up all 6 frames, and drag it below dots. We're going to rename this to BG for background. We're going to select the blank keyframe right here, and first let's lock our dots layer so that we don't have anything happening on accident. So background layer selected. Click on frame 1 where our blank keyframe is. We're going to set our fill to, our stroke to have no stroke, and we're going to set our fill to be, let's say this this radial gradient down here. So we're going to go to our rectangle tool, and I'm just going to, I'm just going to click and drag and hold shift, and that way we get a square, right? And now we're going to just select it, going into our align panel, or make sure align to stage is checked, and we're going to center it to make sure it's dead center. And now let's just make sure it has enough room to hold all of our dots, and it does. I'm actually just going to shrink it down just a little bit using the free transform tool. So I'm going to hold shift and alt, and you can tweak yours to whatever you feel like looks good, but I'm going to do mine like that. So I'm going to select, I'm going to go to my gradient transform tool. I'm going to click on it, and I'm just going to grab this this little circle with the arrow in it so that I can make it bigger, and I'm just going to stretch it out so that way I don't have so much black on my die. So now what we have is a die with 6 sides. Cool. So let's save and go back into our main stage. Right now we have a layer actions and we have a layer die. So let's go to our layer die, make sure it's selected, go to your library, and drag on the movie clip die. Okay, and you could actually get rid of these 9 dots and 3 V dots movie clips if you'd like. We don't need them anymore, but I'm just gonna leave them there because why not? They might be useful later. So now on our stage we have our die, and I am just going to go ahead and align this to the center of our stage. So now if I save and run, let's see what happens. Well, Whoa, we got something going a little crazy here. Well, what's happening is, as our movie clip is running, it's looping through all 6 of its frames over and over again. And we don't want that to happen. So the way that we do this, or we fix this, is I'm just going to double click so that I go inside of our die movie clip. And I'm going to add a new layer. I'm going to call it actions. We can actually put actions inside of a movie clip. So I'm going to lock this layer, select frame 1 of my actions layer, tap F9, and the way we prevent a movie clip or an animation or a stage from playing is just typing the word stop on the actions next to it. So stop, all lowercase, open close parentheses, semicolon to finish. And we'll say, this will stop the animation from playing. And what that's going to do is going to stop on whatever frame you tell it to stop. So we put the stop on frame 1, and it's only going to happen on frame 1. So just because it's extended over all these doesn't mean it's going to do anything. We could actually just, I'm going to click here, hold shift, click here, and then right click, click remove frames, and this should work exactly the same. So now if I go back to my stage and I run and do the hokey pokey, now you see that our die is no longer flip-flopping, spazzing out, right? It's just chilling there, and that's great, but, well, we want to actually be able to use it, right? So let's get down to the cool part of the code. So what we're going to do is, on our actions frame, we're just going to go ahead and tap F9, and we're just going to go ahead and add an event listener to our stage. So I'm going to say stage.add event listener, and we're going to look for the mouse event.click. Okay, and we're going to call a function called click listener, right? And say add mouse click listener to stage. Now let's create this function click listener, right? So I'm going to say function click listener. Remember to spell it just like you did up here. Say E, because you're passing in what type of event, a mouse event. Oops, and remember, if this import thing comes up, don't worry about it. Then we're not going to return anything, so make sure it says void. And then we're going to put our open curly brackets, close curly brackets. And to make sure this is working, I'm just going to trace out the word click. Click save. So now when we run, every time I click, our output says click. It doesn't matter where I click as long as it's on the stage. Good. So let's go back to our code and let's do the next part. We're going to need to get a value between 1 and 6. So how do we do that? Let's do this inside of our trace statement, right? We're going to say math.random, right? Because we want a random number. And we want 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. 6 minus 1, that gives us a range of 5, so we're going to multiply it by 5. This will give us a value between 0 and 5, right? We want between 1 and 6. So what do we need to do? We need to add 1. So let's put in parentheses around math.random times 5, and then add the number 1. So now if we run this, this should give us a value between between 1 and 6 every time we click on our stage, right? So let's test it. Click, 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 click. There we go. These are all values between 1 and 6. But these are all decimal values. So how do we fix that? Well, by rounding. Yay! So let's do this. So right before our trace statement, we want to say math.round, open parentheses, and then we're going to enclose it so that all of this in here is included. All right. So I'm going to save and run, and now we should get a value between 1 and 6 every time we click, and they should be all whole numbers. So there you go. I got 6 here, and I got 1 to begin. So now I know this is working. Cool. And that's fine and dandy now, but what do we do with it? Well, first, let's create a variable so that we can store this, and we don't need this ugly part in the trace statement, right? So let's say var, and we'll call it face num for whatever side of the die, whatever face it's going to show. And it'll be an integer, right? Because it's going to be whole number. And I'll set it equal to 1 to start, because it's just going to start on number 1 until we click. So once we do that, every time we click, we want to change whatever face num is, right? So right here, I'm going to say face num equals, and instead of tracing out all this stuff, let's take everything inside of our trace statement. I'm going to cut it using Control X, or you can just right click and select cut. And I'm just going to paste it with Control V right here and make sure I end with the semicolon. So now every time I click, we're going to get a value between 1 and 6 into our variable trace num. Sorry, our variable face num. So now if I copy face num and put it in our trace statement, it should do just about exactly what it did before, but we don't have to worry about all of this ugly stuff in our trace and anywhere else. So let's run it, make sure that I'm not a liar. And I'm going to click, 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 and we're getting a value between 1 and 6 up here. So we're good still. And let's put one more comment on our actions. I'm just going back to our actions, and let's say, what do you want to say? Value that represents what face to show. Okay? So once we have all this, all we have to do now is tell our die which side to show. We already have the variable, right? So after we get a value in face num, what we can do is we can say, well, first of all, we can't say anything, because what did we not do with our die? We did not give it an instance name. So let's save real quick, go back to our stage, and give die, our instance of die, an instance name. So I'm just going to click on it, go up here, and I'm going to call it my die, and press enter, and I'm going to go back to my actions window. Oops, and make sure you go click on the frame and click actions or F9. So now that we have that, now we can reference my die by name. So I'm going to type just like I did there, my capital D, my die, and my die has a property or a function or a method that's stored inside of it where we can go to a frame and stop there. But Mr. Davis, how do you know that that works? Well, how do I know that that works and that it even exists? Well, with our handy dandy application programming interface link. So I'm going to click on that, which will bring up this lovely menu here, and I'm going to search for movie clip, because remember, we made a movie clip. Click on movie clip, and if I scroll down to public methods, method is just another name for function. You can see there is a method called goTo and stop. And what does it say? It says brings the playhead to the specified frame of the movie clip and stops it there. Basically, it says go to a certain frame and stop. And if you want more information about it, you can click on it, and it says everything you might possibly need to know. So I do know that goTo and stop, you have to give it an actual frame to go to. Kind of shows you how that works down here. I'm going to go back into my code under actions. I'm going to say goTo and stop, and make sure you use the capitalization like I do here, which is in that API reference if you don't remember. And what we're going to do is say we want to go to whatever number we got from, or we put in face num, right, between 1 and 6, random number. So I'm going to say we want to go to and stop whatever number is in face num. And we just end the parentheses and end our line with the semicolon. So now that we have that, let's put one more comment and say get a whole number between 1 and 6. Now if we save and run our program, now we're going to click, and every time we click, it's going to whatever frame that face num is being told to go to. So this should match up with what's coming out of our output. So 3, 4, 2, 6, 6, 2, 5, 4, etc. and etc. This is all fine and dandy, but maybe you've noticed, if you've got a keen eye, that the numbers 1 and 6 don't really seem to be coming up that much, at least as much as 2, 3, 4, and 5. And I'm going to explain why. Inside of our round function, we have math.random times 5, which will give us a value between 0 and 5. And then we add on 1. So that means our potential values are between 1 and 6. So let's take a look at how we would end up with those rounded numbers. Okay, so the potential numbers we can get are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And the lowest number we can get is 1. The highest number we can get is 6. So that means before we round, the only way we can get 1 is if we have a number between 1 and 1.5, which gives us a total range of 0.5. What about the number 2? Well, the number 2, as long as it's greater than 1.5, or greater than or equal to 1.5, and it's less than 2.5, then we'll end up with the number 2. It'll round to the number 2. So that's a range of 1. Notice how to get 1, we only have a range of 0.5. To get 2, we have a range of 1. Difference between 1.5 and 2.5. Same with 3. We have a range of 1 between 2.5 and 3.5. For 4, also a range of 1. 5, also a range of 1. Because 6 is our highest number, we have a range of 0.5, similar to our range for 1. So our chances of getting the number 1 and the number 6 are essentially cut in half in comparison to either 2, 3, 4, or 5. How do we fix that? Well, I'm going to show you. So now that we know that this method that we're using does not give us an even probability, let's comment it out. And let's put another, let's add on to this comment here. So instead of saying get a whole number between 1 and 6, we're going to say get a whole number between 1 and 6 without even probability. There we go. So what's the correct way to do it? Well, Flash has another method of rounding. It actually has multiple methods of rounding, but there's a method called math.floor. And what that does is it rounds down no matter what. So we can use this to actually generate a number between 1 and 6 that gives us an even chance of getting each number. If we set face num equal to, I'm going to say math.floor. And inside of math.floor, I'm going to put math.random times 5 and end with a semicolon. Now this isn't going to get us a number between 1 and 6, but I just want to use this as an example, okay? So math.floor is going to round down any number to the whole number right below it. So if we got 1.5, it would round it down to 1. If we got 4.9, it would round it down to 4. So if we do this, this is going to give us a range between 0 and 4. Because math.random doesn't actually, when I say it gives us a number between 0 and 1, it doesn't actually include the number 1. It ends up going to like 0.999999999. You can keep going on forever. So what this is doing is returning a number between 0 and 4.999999999. And if we round that down, we get possibility of 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. That only gives us 5 total numbers. We need 6, right? We need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 when we end up being done. So let's go ahead and change this to 6. And now this will end up returning a value of 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. Because remember, this would return 5.99999, and if you round that down, it ends up going into 5. So that's cool, but we need it to start at 1. So let's wrap our math.random times 6 in parentheses, and then add the number 1. And this way, we are going to get a whole number between 1 and 6 with even probability. Geez, I can't spell today. I think that's correct. So let me explain that. Before we get to our rounding with math.floor, we're going to get a value between 0 and 6 that does not include 6, and then we're going to add 1. So this is going to give us a value between 1 and 7. With math.round, these were our probabilities. With math.floor, the range here is 1 for every single one of our numbers. And this way we have an even chance of getting any number we would roll. And that might seem very minor to some of you, but if you change the statistics and the probability of getting of a dice roll, that can completely change your game. So I'm going to test my changes just to prove to you that it works. I'm going to press Control Enter to run, and I'm just going to click around on my die, and you can see we get the number 1, 3, 5, 3, 1. Let's make sure we're actually getting 1 and 6. There we go. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 are all showing up. And it's not the most obvious thing in the world, but the distribution is a lot more fair when you do it this way.